Hi there and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Deepa Robbins and I'm coming to you from Designs by D to show you a couple more cards inside and out this time. So instead of posting two separate videos, I'm going to do both in one. So here's a look at the first card that I worked on. It's a Trifold card, and this one I used some corals, and in the flap that sort of folds up there with the sentiment, I used some silver. This one's got more purples and gold, so it's got a warmer tone to it. And I used some stamps that I got from a haul from Altenew. So this is the set that I'm focusing on, which is the Build a Flower Morning Glory set. And as you can see, it's got like two main flowers, one with 3 layers and one with 4. And these Build a Flower sets come with the dies. You can't buy them separately, so they actually come in handy. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to name them Card 1 and Card 2. And for Card 1, I'm going to be using Neenah Exact White 90-pound cardstock, and I'm going to cut the die out first. The reason for this is because this stamp set actually has a few separate little elements, and so in order to line them up perfectly, you've got to actually stamp them onto the cutout die cut first. So the set of colors I'm going to be using are Altenew Blush, Pink Pearl, Coral Bliss, and Rouge. And this is actually how I keep all my swatches here. It helps me pick out the colors that I want. So what I did there was I actually put that die cut back into the negative piece of cardstock there so that it made it easier for me to line up in my Misty. And I'm going to be using those colors that I mentioned here. And I'll post in the subtitles here exactly what each color is as I go along. I'm speeding up the stamping here for you because I don't think that you need to see it in slow motion. It's just going to take forever. But for the leaf elements here, I'm using Sweet Leaf for the first layer and Minty Mint for the second. Now, all the inks that I'm using for the flowers are all Altenew inks. I just find them easier to use because they come in sets of 4. So you don't have to think about what colors you're going to use for each layer. So basically it starts off with a lighter color and goes to an increasingly dark color and basically gives you each layer of the stamp so that you can build up to the perfectly stamped layered flower. So there's my final Morning Glory there. Now I'm going to stamp out another flower, and this one actually has 4 layers to it. So I'll be using the Blush, Pink Pearl, Coral Bliss, and Rouge, whereas on the first flower, I only used the Blush, Pink Pearl, and Coral Bliss. So here I'm stamping out that flower again, and I'm going to use the same colors for the leaf elements. I'm going to do a couple little leaf fronds so that I can place them around the flowers. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to die cut these ones out too. So as I show you here, yeah, I'm using the Sweet Leaf again and the Minty Mint. So these are really nice flowers. I actually found that they die cut really nicely. They stamp out nicely. And because they have such a large area that's covered from layer to layer, you don't have to worry about splotchiness. Now I decided to add some Ranger Holographic embossing powder here because I wanted to have a bit more of a sheen to it. So here I'm actually drying off my my stamped elements so that they don't like stick to the embossing powder all over. And here I'm using a VersaMarker. Now I got this a while back and I was like, when am I ever going to use this? I guess for just little spots and areas that I need to fix up where it didn't get stamped. But actually this is great for highlighting little areas on your stamp, your stamped image that you want to pick up embossing powder. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm just sort of drawing over any area that I want to pick up that embossing powder and have that bit of holographic shine. And I'm going to put it all over the flower and the leaves here. Next, I'm going to get that coffee filter out to collect all of my embossing powder. And I'll pour that over the top and tap off the excess, and as you can see, it has that nice sheen that sort of shines like greeny yellow, like all different colors there. So when you do this, you want to make sure to heat up your heat gun for a little while before you put it to your die cut there to melt the powder. And as you can see, it's curling up, so I'm heating it on the back too, and then I'll also flatten it out. Sometimes what I do is just put it under some books overnight. So there you go, I have those final pieces there. Now for card number 2, I'm using the same exact cardstock, Neenah Exact White 90 pound. And this cardstock I've mentioned before is thinner, so it doesn't build too much bulk. That's why I like using it. So here I have my layers: Soft Lilac, Lavender Fields, Deep Iris, Midnight Violet. So all of these inks are basically from one line of ink from the Shades of Purple ink set from Altenew. So this is, like I said, you just use one color to the next, and you really don't have to think about how they're going to layer and which is going to be darker and so on. So I'm creating a mask here with Inkadinkado masking paper. This is great. So because I have the dies, I can just sort of cut out my mask with the die rather than having to fussy cut them. They'll have a bit of a border. So what I usually do is sort of from side to side move it around so that it's butted right up against the edge of that stamped image, so I don't get too much of an outline. And for this purple flower, for the leaf elements, I'm actually going to be using the colors from the Green Fields set. So that's Frayed Leaf and what's the other? Forest Glades. So here I'm doing a masking technique because what I'm going to do is I'm not going to actually die cut them and put the different elements on one by one. I wanted to just have one continuous stamped image so that it's got a more of a Wendy effect. So there's my second flower, and I'll just stamp another vine there. Now I actually love this part here. So that's where you actually take your mask off. I think I put a mask on there, but I didn't really need it, so I just put it aside again. So there's the leaf, and then I'll do the second layer of the leaf, and then I'll pull that mask off, and literally it's like the best feeling ever because you get to see your finished product here. Now what I'm going to do is actually put that mask back on, and I wanted to stamp some of these little curly vines that they have with the set. I really like these because they help you fill up areas and give it a bit more interest. So next what I'm going to do is take this set of scalloped rectangles. It's just a general set that I bought from AliExpress. So they were very cheap. So I have to note that. AliExpress, very good for dies. They're super cheap, and I mean, you don't have to be picky about your dies like you might be about your stamps. So what I'm going to do is put it on an angle and do some partial die cutting. So I'm just going to put the plate over like this. So it's only going to cut what's underneath the plate, and that's the final product that you get there. So I just get a little scalloped V there, which is exactly what I wanted. And I'm showing you how I'm going to place those flowers around. I'm just kind of playing there. So here I'm going to use the Color Box Petal Point Easter Egg ink set. It has a bunch of colors here, and it's cool because the colors just sort of slip out like this, and you can use what you want and put it back. And if you want, you can line up a few colors together and sort of get a blending effect. But I'm just going to use this color by itself for now. And I'm using it to do some background, faded stamping in the background here, just to get rid of all the white. I hate leaving plain white on my cards. I know it looks nice and some people love that clean look, but I feel like it's unfinished. I have to put something on it. And so here you go. I've stamped up the second layer of the flower and some vines in the background there. And yeah, the second layer of the leaf as well. So you can see it makes a nice little background there, and it's not too much to stand out, but enough to sort of create a bit of interest. And there you go. So next what I'll do is work on the second card, and I'm gonna just cut around the sides. What I wanted to do was have a diagonal line, so I'm cutting a diagonal line, but I'm only cutting in between the flower elements, so I get a nice straight line. I found that the paper cutter there, it wasn't really working so well with the small area, so I used my ruler, and then I used an X-Acto knife to sort of cut around the images so that I got a nice overhanging type flower here. So next what I'm going to do is do the background on this card. So because it is a 1D card, sorry, 2D, 1D, I don't know, I always get confused with that, but anyways, what I'm going to do is mask my flowers, and I'm going to use this VersaMark Dazzle Champagne colored ink to sort of create a watermark background here, just like I did with the other card And it really creates a water background. Like you can hardly see that I stamped anything here, but it has a bit of a gold type shine. It's very hard to see, but on the actual card in person, you can see a bit of a faint watermark impression. Now I'm going to do the card bases. So I'm using Hammermill printer paper, 100 pound. As I've mentioned before, don't let the 100 pound, or sorry, the printer paper word fool you. It is thick card base. And I've just cut my pieces. They're both 5.5 inches, and they're the width is maintained at 5.5, but the lengths sort of differ, and I can't really give you an exact measurement because I just sort of altered them a little bit in order to fit on my paper, but it should be around 8.5 inches. So here I'm scoring little edges at the end of each of these pages so that I can create the little flaps that are going to open up. And here I'm using the front of my card to sort of trace around where I want to cut this piece because I'm going to have to cut it in a V shape to fit on the back. So here I've traced the scallop, and I'm sort of creating a little bit of a line, a little mark to show exactly where I'd cut a straight line. And then I'll use my paper cutter here to cut that V out. And there you have it. So there's the V. And what I'm going to do is attach that front to that V, just like you can see here. Now I'm going to work on the bottom flaps. So these are the flaps that are folding up with the sentiment. And I'm using an antique linen distress ink here. So this is for the second card. What happened here is that my distress inks, I've moved, and as I moved, I guess from my old place, it was very hot and very dry. So my ink sort of dried out, and I need to buy re-inkers. So I couldn't really finish my flap here. So what I did was switch to Oxide ink, antique linen Oxide ink. And of course, those are a hybrid ink, so they have a bit of a pigment in it. So they'll also have a bit of stick to it after I've laid it all down there. And I'm using this little trick here I've seen Christina Warner using that Post-it tape so your hands don't get dirty. Once again, I do not know her at all, but I love her videos. So here's some Perfect Pearls Perfect Gold powder. What I'm going to do is use this to put over top of that area that I just created there in order to create a shiny type of metallic goldy effect. But I didn't want it to be too full on. Like I could have used gold foil here, but I wanted it to be a bit more subtle. So I decided to go this route instead. So here I'm just sort of spreading it all over. And here you get a bit more like it's not a continuous look. It's got a bit of extra gold here and there, so I kind of wanted to keep that antique-ish type look going. What I'm going to do is this is just water, regular water in a spray bottle, and I'm just going to spray a light mist over top of it. Now, the Perfect Pearls has a binding agent, but this is going to help it stick even better, and it also gives it a bit of a droplet effect, which you can't really see here. So this is for the first card, I'm going to do more of cool colors. So I'm using Hero Art Soft Granite ink. I actually originally started that with some more distress ink. I think I used Hickory Smoke or something like that. But once again, my ink pads were dried out, so I had to switch. For this one, I'm going to use the Perfect Pearls Perfect Pearl powder, and that gives me a silver effect. So there I've got my two pieces, and you can see that bit of sheen. Now I'm going to work on the insides of the card. This is card 1, so it's got those cooler colors with the corals, and I'm going to be using that blush colored ink to just stamp the flowers and create a bit of a background. And along with the blush, I'm going to be using the Sweet Leaf to create the leaf colors. So I'll just stamp some stems and some vines and some leaves. And these are all the second layers of the stamps that I'm using again. So just like I created a background for the front, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the inside. So that sort of coordinates the inside with the outside so that there's a bit of a flow between the front and the inside. Just so that it doesn't look like your inside is completely different from your front. Once again, I am using the same Morning Glory stamps as well, so that sort of ties it in as well. Actually, it ties it in a lot. So this is just that top flap, inside, and then I did the exact same for the bottom flap. So on the other side of this, I have that metallic silver. And then for the centerpiece, I just did a few flowers around the sides so that I left space for your sentiment there in the center, or any type of message you want to write. Now for card number 2, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to be using the soft lilac and the frayed leaf inks. And it's important to note that these are lighter colors. So even if you did have an extra long message you wanted to write, you could write over top in black ink. Over top of these areas, so you could sort of write a whole note in here if you really wanted to, because this is actually going to be quite a big card. It's going to end up being 8.5 by 5.5 inches. So I'm doing the exact same thing for the center, leaving some space for writing or for your sentiment. And there are the 2 pieces for the second card. Now I'm just going to fold up my flap here. So as you can see, I stamped along that crease onto the flap because I want it to be a continuous image. You could have taped it off there, but I didn't want to create a gap. So here I'm using Be Creative or Score Pal tape. That's 1/2 inch. Sorry, I think that's actually 1/4 inch. I don't even know. It fits on the edge there, and that's good enough for me. So I'm placing it together here. And there's the second card. And what I'll do is attach the front. So that's the Neenah exact 90 pound. I'm going to attach it to the top of the card here. I really like that it is 90 pounds, so it is thinner. So it doesn't make that card front too thick, which is perfect for mailing. You don't want too much weight. So there's that the second card. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth and messed up orders. And I'm going to add the sentiments now. So here you have the Altenew floral arrangement stamp set. It has some really good sentiments. I'm going to use both the hello and the thank you. For this one, I'm going to use the hello. And I'll just line it up here with my acrylic block. I don't really need to use the Misty because I find when I use pigment ink to stamp my sentiments, which is what I'm going to be doing here, that I don't have to worry too much about it stamping unevenly, especially the VersaFine Onyx black here. If I ink it up enough, it usually stamps pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a chance and stamp it down here without the Misty. If you want to be more careful and make sure you don't screw up or you're new to this, then I'd advise you to use a stamp positioner. So there's my sentiment. And I'm going to move on and do this to card number 1. So now we're going in reverse order. Here's my assembly. And it's the exact same thing. So I'm adding that Be Creative tape. And I will note that I do use that scoring tool because I don't have a bone folder. And I use that to press down that piece of tape because I find it makes it easier to pull off the release piece. And I also score it again or sort of push it down on it after I've released the paper. Like right here, you'll see I'll push it down and then I'll use that scoring tool to press it down even more. So there's the assembly of the first card. And now I have a little bit more work to do because I did die cut those flowers to attach to the front. So here I'm adding some foam tape. This one's going to have a bit more dimension. It's got some 3D foam tape here. And I'll cut off that little bit of the stem and arrange my flowers as I like. I add my foam pieces, and then what I'll do is any overhanging bits, I'll add the Tombow Mono adhesive runner there. Right there, you can see. So I add it so that it sticks to the flower underneath it as well. And those leaves I'll sort of just put in the background there. And I think that's good enough. So I'll do my stamping of my sentiment here. This one's going to be a thank you. And it's from the same exact stamp set from that flower arrangement stamp set from Altenew. And once again, I'm just using the acrylic block. Embellishments, so the fun part. I love this part at the end. I'm actually using iridescent cup sequins from Amazon. These come in a set with about 8 different colored sequins, and they're actually pretty cheap. They're around like $5 for a set with like a whole bunch of sequins. I think around 200 sequins in total. And there's about, I think 25 of each color. Now I'm using some small clear gems, which are from the dollar store. I think I mentioned this before. This whole package I have here that I'm using comes in strips, but that whole set is $1.50 plus tax in Canada, which is probably even less in the US. And now I'm going to use some Tonic Nuvo drops, Ebony Black, to sort of make little dots around the sentiment here. Just because I can never leave my cards alone, I have to add all this extra little stuff. And I don't really use my Nuvo drops as much as I should, so I think I'm going to try and use them as much as possible here. So there's the first card complete. And I'll move on to the second card. This one I'm using Studio Katia Gold Foil Confetti. I love this confetti. It is so cool. And I'm just going to be using my multi-purpose Tombow Mono liquid glue here. I used the same adhesive for the cup sequence in the last card. Now here I want to show you I made a mistake with my Nuvo drops. You see I got a bit of a tail there. I didn't pull my bottle up completely straight. So what I did was take off whatever excess I could, but the black had stained the card, so I couldn't really save it there. I was thinking, and I thought, hey, why not just make that initial dot a little bigger and add some more dots around it to sort of hide it. So there I'm adding another dot and making that one bigger. And for the sake of odds, I'm adding a third dot. And there you go. It looks like I didn't even make a mistake at all. So there's my final card there. And I just want to take a moment to note that I do make my card centers on the inside with nothing there. I leave it blank. And when I do decide to send it to somebody, I'll put the appropriate sentiment in the center, stamp that out, and that's how I'll send it. Now, after a while, what I'll do is I'll go through all the cards that I have. I sort of file them away. And the ones that I don't plan on using, I'll keep them aside and send them to this organization here. It's called Send a Smile for Kids. And this one is in Canada, but there's actually one in, or I think a couple in the US too. I can actually create a link here, but what I'll do is link my blog in the description here, and you can get to the link for the association through my blog. So if you have a chance, click on these videos here. They're another card that I made last week. And if you do like my videos, please press the subscribe button, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.